good stuff there. War Dogs retain, and then that's going to take us into the G1 Climax 34 participants announcement. So first, they announced the 18 men who have their spots locked in the tournament. So in the A block, we have Tetsuya Naito, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, SANADA, Great Okan, Zack Sabre Jr., Gabe Kidd, Evil, and Jake Lee. And then over in the B block, we have Hirooki Goto, El Phantasmo, Yota Tsuji, Jeff Cobb, Henare, David Finlay, Ren Narita, Yuya Uemura, and Konosuke Takeshita. So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to run through the playing guys.
Oh, I was just going to say, as always, when they're making the announcements, I always kind of listen for the crowd reactions, and I felt like the two biggest crowd reactions were for Jake Lee and Konosuke Takeshita. That's not super telling. I think that there's always an excitement when you have outsiders being presented in a G1, format. But I would say that Takeshita probably for the live audience, I thought he had the loudest verbal response of anybody.
Yeah, there was a huge pop for him, and he was like the last, slide of that video for the B block. So it was like, boom, Konosuke Takeshita, AEW, DDT. And the crowd was like, the crowd, big pop.
So. But at the same time, I don't know if that necessarily will translate to how the live audiences will react to him every night. Because, for instance, I remember when Kenta was announced for his first G1 and he was coming in and there was a huge pop, but then
Noah Trash.
By night 3, he was getting called Noah Trash. So you just never know how people are going to react, but it is very exciting.
Yeah. Then the last two spots, the last spot in the A block and B block will be determined by two separate play-in tournaments. And so those will be kicked off here on the New Japan Soul Tour, with the finals being in Tokyo Budokan on July 5th. So in the A block side, we have Tomohiro Ishii, YOSHI-HASHI, Callum, Newman, KENTA, Chase Owens, and Yuijiro Takahashi. On the B block side, we have Hiroshi Tanahashi, Toru Yano, Bolton Oleg, Satoshi Kojima, Taichi, and TJP. So for the A block, it'll be Chase versus YOSHI-HASHI and Yuijiro versus Callum Newman, with Ishii getting the bye there. And that's going to happen on June 22nd. So the winners will face Ishii and KENTA, respectively, on July 3rd. And then the semifinal winners, hold on, lost my spot here. Semifinal winners will advance to July 5th finals. And then the B block, you're going to have Toru Yano and Bolton Oleg and Kojima versus TJP happening on June 23rd. And the winners of those will face Tanahashi and Taichi, respectively, on July 3rd. Semifinals winners will then advance to the finals. So, Josh, overall thoughts on the guys that are locked in, these playing guys, and the overall feel of G1 34?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm scrolling through some of our group chat texts. Rambo Steinbig said Takeshita works way too hard in the ring to get that latter-day Kenta reaction. I hear you, sir. But you know what? Kenta was working pretty hard that first G1.
Yeah, that 2019 G1. He was locked in. He was, he was trying to pull back the clock.
Yeah, so you did a great job recapping everything there, Jeremy. I'm more of like a visual guy, so I wanted to take a look at the qualifiers so I could see what I'm looking at. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of positive things here. I think what's been interesting, so we got they announced the people that be in the play-in blocks on Sunday, but we had to wait a few days to figure out what the actual lineup is. And now, so we finally have that lineup as of this morning. And so now, all throughout the last few days, people on Twitter, people on social media, our friends, people in Discord, everyone's been talking about this. So it's been a lot of positive reception. It's been a while since New Japan has had this kind of buzz going into a G1 Climax. And I think there's a lot of really great things to praise about it. I mean, a lot of it's not anything that we haven't already said. I mean, the return to the 10-man block is very exciting. Something that we've been calling for a long time is the younger guys to be, put into a prominent position, and some of the lesser delivering talent to be, kind of pushed out of the tournament so that it can go back to being a higher quality, and we're seeing that. And then, when it comes to this play-in tournament thing, I think that's a great idea because it really does give us something to pay attention to during this tour pre G1. And what is this tour usually? It's
So normally this is New Japan Road.
Okay, it's just road. Yeah, so normally during this period, like we don't even have a name for the tour. They're just calling it road, and it's pretty lackluster. But in this case, we've got a whole mini tournament leading into G1, and I think that they've done a marvelous job not only picking the guys that should be in this tournament, but the layout of how it's booked. Like the only thing I was complaining about prior to all of this was I thought it would be better to have 8 men in each block so that you wouldn't have any buys going into it.
You're talking about the play-in tournament.
Yeah, the play-in tournament. I'm not a big fan of buys, and so I just always think it's better to work with that even number, like 8, as opposed to, well, they're both even numbers, but the 8 works better than 6. However, when you look at the format of the tournament, the guys that are getting the buys are the ones that are probably the ones who were on the bubble closer than anyone else in the play-in from being eliminated from the tournament. So the guys that are getting that bye, that's Ishii, Kenta, Taichi, and Tanahashi. And those were all people where if they had been announced for the G1, you wouldn't have really been surprised. So it makes sense that they're the ones getting the buys because, they're the more successful, prolonged individuals in that G1 tournament. And then the other guys who are having to have that extra match, whether that's Callum Newman, Yuijiro, YOSHI-HASHI, Chase Owens, Yano, Oleg Bolton, Kojima, TJP, I think they have peripheral fringe claims to potentially be in the tournament, but they're a lot less strong than the 4 guys getting the buys. And I think there's a lot that can really happen here because not only do you set up a really compelling story for whoever it is that gets into the A and B block coming out of this tournament, you also can spin off your own individual stories coming out of the play-in, whether that's something that will continue to the next tour or even like, for instance, let me give you a for instance. Let's say Tanahashi, right? Let's say Tanahashi loses whether that's to Yano or Oleg Bolton, but let's say he loses and he's just not in the tournament. Now that could completely reshape the motivation for his entire year between now and next year, and then potentially his aim is to get back to the G1 and maybe have his swan song because he was left out this year. And so there are things like that. There are narratives that could be shaped and stories that could be told prior to even getting to the G1 just based on this tournament alone. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and for that Tanahashi scenario you mentioned, it also adds another wrinkle if Bolton does it because they're, in a trio, they're the never 6-man champion. So that adds a little bit of issue there. And, if a guy like Bolton Oleg wins or Callum Newman, that's an elevation there, some fresh talent, getting some, new debuts in the G1. And you can really push those guys going forward. And, Callum Newman is a guy that we've been seeing get a lot of opportunities. He had that singles match with Ishii towards the end of last year. He had the match with Naito at Dominion last week. So he's been getting a lot of big opportunities. There's been a lot of focus on him. And that's kind of been his whole arc this year is, I need to get into G1. And so now he has that opportunity. So you look at that play-in those brackets and look, man, there's some favorites in there. Of course, you want to see the ace in there. You want to see, the Stone Pitbull, Tomohiro Ishii in the tournament. But then at the same time, it's like you had some young blood there, like Bolton Oleg and Callum Newman. It's like, yeah, I would love to see those guys run it in too. So it makes it very intriguing, like you mentioned, really spiced up this tour here. Kind of makes a tour must watch now to see, which of these guys are going to get in.
Yeah, when I was talking to friend of the show, Chris Sampson, he sent this to me. He didn't know I was going to read it off on the show, but I think it was interesting what he said. So he said in each side of the brackets, you have one legend, in this case, Ishii and Tanahashi is like one guy that's on the bubble, YOSHI-HASHI and Taichi, one new guy, Newman and Oleg, one upset special, which is Kenta and Yano, one credible wrestler who doesn't produce results, Chase Owens and TJP, and then one wild card in Yuijiro and Kojima. And I don't know if I 100% agree with everything that was laid out there, but I think that that's it's pretty dead on. It's a really good analysis of what you're looking at here. And one of the complaints that I had was that I wasn't sure that, I was like, okay, the play-in guys that are here, it's a pretty good mix, but hypothetically, there's a lot of them that I couldn't necessarily see going through just given the field. Then today they put out the actual brackets, and the way they laid the brackets out does make it believe. Like, I'll give you for instance, Yano was a guy where I was like, just looking at I was like, when he's in a block with Tanahashi, Oleg Bolton, Taichi, Kojima, and TJP, like, I just can't see him winning a single elimination tournament to get into the G1. Like, that's just not a realistic thing. But now that the brackets have come out and I see, like, first night he's fighting Oleg Bolton, I could see him rolling up Oleg Bolton. And then second night, he's got Tanahashi, and I've seen him roll up Tanahashi a time or two. And then on night 3, we don't know who he's getting. Like, you know what I mean? It could be TJP. And could I see Yano going through that particular path and getting through? I'm like, yeah, I actually could. So now, based on the way that they've structured these brackets, they've done a really great job kind of making things attainable for even, like, I don't want to say it for sure, but like even guys that I have no doubt are going to, I don't think they're going to get in, but like even like a Chase Owens or a Yuijiro, you look at their path and it's not as difficult to imagine them getting through as it would have been prior to seeing these brackets.
Yeah, we know Chase Owens is a guy that they like to give sneaky wins to. So yeah, I could see Chase there, then goes to face Ishii, and I think he's beaten Ishii like the last 2 singles matches they've had. So yeah, we've seen that happen. He could easily beat Ishii and go to that finals, and then you never know who gets. What if Callum gets through? Like, I could see him beating Callum in the finals. I could see Chase beating Kenta, his partner, or Yuijiro. So it all depends on how things shake out. But I think everybody has a decent chance of advancing to the finals of their respective blocks.
Yeah, and there's very compelling stories. So I mean, we've had the thing with Taichi I talked about where he's looking in the camera. Who knows what the fuck that's about, but maybe that could be progressed by him getting it into the tournament. Tanahashi, Kojima, 2 older guys. We never have seen them have their quote unquote send off G1s. You could probably even throw maybe Ishii / Kenta into that mix if that's the route you wanted to go. Oleg Bolton, TJP, Callum Newman, none of them have ever been in the tournament before. And especially for Oleg Bolton and Callum Newman all year, there's been the hubbub that they're going to be in the G1. Now they're not. They're trying to find their way in. And that would be like this incredible learning experience for both of them. But, they're going to have to go through a pretty deep tournament just to even attain that spot. And then you got TJP with the whole Capitan story and, him trying to be an open weight and do all the tournaments and hold all the gold and fight everybody. And I'm just calling it right now. I think him and Taichi wind up against one another in the second round of that bracket. And that plays a ton off of their match that they had in the, the faction warfare gauntlet match earlier this year where TJP beat Taichi unexpectedly. And then YOSHI-HASHI and Chase Owens are 2 guys that like they've been in the tournament. They haven't been doing great necessarily, but they're always there. And now they're ousted and they're trying to get back there. And I mean, YOSHI-HASHI's out, but Goto's in. Like that, what does that tell you about the power dynamic of Bishamon? Like there's just a lot at play here.
Yeah, man, there's so much nuanced storytelling here. And I would love, for the ace of MLW to advance, but I'm agreeing with you. I think TJP is going to get the the win over him to set up that, match with Taichi. Yeah, like you mentioned, playing off the faction warfare that they had between Just Five Guys, United Empire, where TJP pinned Taichi. So Taichi could get the win back, or TJP could beat him again to solidify, being the captain. So there's so many different directions that they can go with this play-in tournament. I want to go to the blocks real quick before we answer all the questions that we got. A ton of questions here.
Okay.
So with the blocks, I'm a little bit, I don't know what the right feeling is, but there's just certain guys that I would have kept out of Naito's block. Because I did a fantasy booking thing on the Patreon past Friday, and I was saying, top guys I think who could win this tournament are Shingo, Sabre, and Umino. I would put them in the opposite block of Naito and have them, going in alive in the semifinals. And now all three of those guys, who are like three guys I thought could win, are now in the same block as Naito, which I know in the past they have done it where the winner is in the block as a champion. We saw that in 2019 with Kota Ibushi being in the same block as Okada and having that match and having a rematch in Tokyo Dome. But that was also part of Double Gold Dash. So it's not likely now that Sabre, Shingo, or Umino can win now with them. I think their chances go down dramatically with them being in the same block as Naito.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm pretty sure Naito is defeating Jon Moxley at Forbidden Door,
right?
To get back to World Championship,
right?
And so normally you wouldn't want to run back a rematch at the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, but they've been doing that for a few years now.
That's what I said. I know they've done it for last, like the 2019 one. I think they might have done it in 2020. And so, but I just think that if they do want to protect like a title match for Tokyo Dome, their chances go down.
I agree with you. I do. But the counter argument to that is, as great as the B block talent is, who in that B block could you, if you're just boiling it down to simple, what is a marquee match for Wrestle Kingdom? Who out of that entire B block, including the guys that are in the play-in rounds, because you have to factor them in as being potential guys. Is there a single match there that you could realistically see headlining the Dome where it's Naito versus them?
There's two I see. I could see it being Naito versus Yota Tsuji. It is Wrestle Kingdom is on a Saturday, so I think they'll draw well regardless of who Naito's in there with. So if you want to give Tsuji the big spotlight, there's a lot of story there. They had the match this year at Sakura Genesis, so there's a lot of story you can do there with Tsuji coming back and finally beating Naito at the Tokyo Dome and really establishing him. And then the other guy is Konosuke Takeshita, which I know a lot of people would be very upset about if he were to win this tournament and go on to main event the Tokyo Dome.
I really couldn't see that second. And I know I'm doing a funny shtick about AEW earlier in the show, but like putting that aside, this is my serious hat. I just don't see that unless I couldn't. Where I would change my tone on that is, we know that Takeshita is going to put in incredible performances. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. However, it depends on what kind of crowd reactions he's getting. If he like comes in and is just like a fucking superstar supernova and is getting incredible crowd reactions and the gates are going up and like it's undeniable that this is a guy, then yeah, I might be inclined to be like, yeah, maybe they need to go with that. But he's a DDT guy at the end of the day. That's where like his bones were made in Japan. Not saying that we've never had anyone come from DDT and make a mark in New Japan. I mean, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi do exist, but I just don't think that that's going to happen here. I think Takeshita goes far in the tournament. I do, for sure. But I don't see him and Naito as being a big enough marquee match for them to do the Dome, personally. The only match on the B block that the only two that I think that New Japan maybe could go with is like Tsuji is likely. I guess if they really, really wanted to go this way, they could go David Finlay just because they seem to love the guy, but I doubt it. And then looking at the play-in matches, I mean, you got Taichi, Kojima, TJP, Yano, Oleg Bolton. Tanahashi, if he wants to pull the ace president card and make himself have one last main event and win the G1. um, I'm not too worried about the prospects of anyone from the B block headlining the Dome against Naito, unless it was Tsuji. And given the fact that he already won the New Japan Cup and already faced Naito earlier in the year, I find that prospect less likely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just doing simple math, I think you're still right. I think that the likely opponent for Naito in the Dome is sitting in the A block with him.
Yeah, it could happen. I'm just used to that old school mentality of the challengers usually in the opposite block of the champion, but they've kind of broken from that a little bit in the last couple of years as well. And yeah, also there is a small chance that Naito loses to Mox, and there's no champion in the G1 at all.
That's not happening. It's pretty John. That's one thing we got to talk about here. Jon Moxley is not in the tournament, and we recently were, dialoguing with individuals out there who were adamant that Jon Moxley would be in this tournament, and we told people they wouldn't, and they thought he would, and they were wrong. and it's pretty clear why. I mean, there's quite a few reasons that Jon Moxley wouldn't be in the tournament, even if he did retain the title. I mean, I know earlier in the year I was advocating for Jon Moxley to be in the tournament, but that's more like, I would love it if he was, but it's just not realistic that it was going to happen. What did Rambo Slam Pick? He said, if TK drops off a suitcase of cash and a duffel bag of White Claws, I think Tanahashi will go for it. He must be talking about the Takeshita thing. There's quite a few reasons. Jon Moxley would have to eat 2 to 4, somewhere between 2 and 4 losses in the tournament for it to work. So there's that. There's the aspect where they're in the middle of negotiating their TV rights deal and they're lacking for star power, and they already called him home early to be back on TV when he wasn't supposed to. So the idea that they're going to let him go for this length of time and eat those losses is highly unlikely. Plus the grind and the liability that's put on, for him to wrestle that arduous schedule. And last time he did that, keep in mind, it was before he signed with AEW, and he got injured, and he had lagging, issues and injuries coming out of the G1 that he needed surgery for. So that could easily be exasperated. And then again, the fact that he is very likely dropping the title to Naito at Forbidden Door. So there's no need for him to be in the tournament because he's not going to be champion any longer. We're probably not going to see Moxley in New Japan again until Wrestle Kingdom, most likely. So with that being the case, it is interesting that they kind of have already shown their hand by telling us that the current world champion is not announced and not going to be in the G1. That pretty much is tipping the hat to the idea that he's dropping that title to Naito, and it's like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, and another small tip of the hat that they did was with the Capital Collision poster. Jon Moxley's been all over the US show posters, and he was not announced or on the poster for Capital Collision in August. So I think that kind of shows you that he's not going to be champion. He's not going to be around till Dome season.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where we, time and time again, we say the company needs to produce a card, do advertising ahead of time, but it's, it's double-edged because on the dog's getting food. It's double-edged because when there is something like this, like a title change coming up, and they don't want to let you know, but they also can't false advertise, what are they going to do? So it kind of sucks in that regard, but if you're paying attention, you can see the tea leaves.
Yeah. Well, we got a ton of questions here. Let's jump into them. First from Copper Squire. As we are bound to get your reactions to both the 18 chosen and the qualifier participants, do you have any disappointments of lack of certain people?
No, the only thing that I would say, I when you were talking, Jeremy, about the A side having the guys that you think are the most likely winners, not only is there that aspect, but the A block is also full of former and recent kayfabe world champions. Now, that doesn't mean that I necessarily think like SANADA and Evil and Naito are all going to be like top performers in the tournament, but just when it comes to optics, you've got most of the major stars in the A block, and the B block has a lot of top talent, but it's not nearly as full of stars or in the, in the modern sense for the companies. So that's a little surprising. I feel like maybe they should have evened that out a little bit.
Yeah, the A block does look a little bit more star heavy, and it's an LIJ block with Naito, Shingo, SANADA, Evil, current and former LIJ stars is there as well. Former world champions. You got Jake Lee, who's pushed as a top guy in Noah. So yeah, that block it does seem very top heavy. Where the B block, you have a lot of guys that are normally kind of your upper mid carders, your Jeff Cobbs, your ELP, your Henares, Dave Finlay, those guys that haven't really cracked the main event yet. And then, I mean, Takeshita, I feel like is the one guy that is in Japan, a top star. He's a top guy in DDT, and he's done some DDT stuff this year that's drawn pretty well. He got great reactions at the All Together show. So I feel like the Japanese audience does see him as a star. So from a name perspective, he's kind of one of the bigger guys in that block. And then we just don't know who's going to come out of that the B qualifiers. I mean, the biggest name in the B qualifiers is Tanahashi. So if he is able to make it through, that does kind of help add some star power to that block.
Yeah, and when I first looked at the blocks, I thought they were pretty even. That was my first take on it, but I'm looking at it from match quality standpoint because I'm just thinking G1, we're getting bangers, bring on the stars, and I'm looking at I'm like, they're pretty even in terms of quality, and in fact, the B block might wind up being the better performing block in terms of entertainment. But then earlier today, someone pointed out to me the amount of like quote unquote stars, top guys that have had top runs in the A block. And then I start thinking more about it. I'm like, oh, I guess that A block is more star heavy, but that's not to, that's not for me to, try to say that they're going to have better matches or more intrigue, because I don't think that's the case yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys in that B block like Takeshita. I think he's going to have great matches every night. Tsuji, I think, is going to be great every night. Cobb is usually pretty great every night, and ELP, he's gonna really want to break out. So I think there's some guys there that will have some great matches. But in the A block, if they get Ishii, I mean, they're gonna have a ton of great matches on top of all the guys that they already have in there. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to come, and yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see who is the top three in that B block. Because I feel like the top guys in all one block, it kind of opened up the room to really push maybe three new guys out of that B block group. So let's see. Moving on to the next question from Dr. Evil Lariat. He says the G1 is the strongest in years. Why would they not try to get Moxley in there?
Well, I kind of already gave my argument for why he's not in it. I can't say that they didn't try. Who's to say? We don't know that that's the case. Maybe they did. Maybe it was already, a foregone conclusion he's not going to be in it. I couldn't tell you whether or not there was an attempt made at all.
Yeah, you kind of went through the key reasons there. He also says, if I can manifest Jake Lee and Takeshita into G1, and manifest Moxley still being IWGP champion. So as a favor to you guys, I'm going to manifest a Reiwa guy becomes the next IWGP champ. What would you rather I help you bring into NJPW?
I don't even know what that question is all over the place. So I guess he's asking us what we should ask him to manifest as the reality of New Japan. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rainbow Sign picks a Shota Umino.
Yeah, I mean Umino, finally getting that push and getting into the title mix, I think would be cool. I don't know. I'm a Tsuji guy. I think the G in G1 stands for Gene Blast. So I would be very happy with Tsuji winning G1 and beating Naito in the Dome.
And see, for me, I'm at a point where I think all of those guys are going to get title runs one way or the other. And so I think timing is key. I think that it has more to do so with when they get the title, title opportunity, the title reign, and, can make the most impact and get the most bang for their buck by carrying the strap. That's what, matters to me more as opposed to who it is. It's when it is for those guys.
Yeah. Rainbow Sandbag asks, do you believe the playing tournaments are set up to give the rub to young guys like
You skipped the question.
Whoops. Twitter follower at Pete0263983. Can and will Shingo not be a finalist? He's the best. The best. Shingo versus Takeshita would feed families. Well, not my family, because I'd call off work and lose my job just to watch.
That's one thing. We're getting Shingo and Naito again, which I'm not always keen as being the biggest Naito guy, but the last time those two guys locked up, it was an incredible match. And we've been waiting for years for them to lock horns again, and it's finally happening. And one thing too, Jeremy, I know you know this, but when you were lamenting several people being in the block with Naito, I don't know if you were taking into account that 3 people are going through. Very likely Naito will be one of those guys, but I think at least 2 of the 3 that you have predicted as being potential winners are also going through with him.
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I thought this in our group chat earlier. I mean, the 3 I said, Sabre, Umino, and Shingo would be the 3 guys I push through. Like, I would do a 4-way tie of points between them and Naito, and then have one of them have the tiebreaker over Naito. Then I would put through Umino, Sabre, and Shingo.
I was gonna say you're selling Naito a little bit short there, but then the scenario that you painted where it's a tiebreaker scenario kind of does make sense. The only thing with that is my argument, Naito needs to go through so that he can lose to I don't think he'll go in as it would happen one of 2 ways. Either he would be the 1A guy, right? And then whoever comes through beats him and then loses the tournament. And then they can do their, obligatory title match before the dome at that point. But the more likely scenario is Naito goes through as one of the B2, B3 guys, loses that match, and then whoever beat him loses to the next guy, and then that guy wins the tournament. And I think that's how they're going to set up his title challenge. He has to be in those top 3.
Yeah, my only problem with Naito advancing to the semifinals is then you're going to get a 3rd matchup with somebody potentially for that Tokyo Dome main event, which I guess you could do a series of 3 matches, and that would be different.
No. I'm saying that whoever beats him is not going to win the tournament. They're going to beat him. You're saying potentially they could go all the way.
So if the winner's coming from the A block and he's in the semifinals, they might potentially wrestle him in the semifinals, win the tournament, and then that would be the 3rd time they wrestle at Tokyo Dome.
No, I don't think that's happening. I think the person that I personally think the person that beats him will be the one that gets the 3rd or 4th quarter title shot in October, like they always do. That person will not win the tournament because they'll get the title shot in October, and whoever else is in that block with them, it will probably be the guy that wins the whole thing.
Yeah. So now from Rambo and Sam Pig, do you believe the playing tournaments are set up to give the rub to young guys like Oleg Bolton, Callum Newman, etc., who may not get wins in the round robin tournament, but could get a key win during the play-in over veteran talent?
Potentially, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if the young guys did do well in the play-in. I'm not. I think it is feasible that they could go through the whole, either one of them or even both of them could win the play-ins, but I'm not 100% sold on that. But yeah, since they're both in the opening round, I could see them winning their opening round match to kind of get a big win, and then, maybe another win, and then maybe they lose, that sort of thing. Hard to say, but there's a lot of compelling possibilities for who can come out of those blocks.
Yeah, I think it's a great way just to start to push them and get them in there with the established guys. And then, like you said, you could always set up stories with, guys that have to beat, the whole like Callum Ishii thing, like that's been the story. And maybe, Ishii becomes what he was for Henare, and Callum's now chasing Ishii. And maybe that's his story going forward. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can set up.
One thing too, Jeremy, and I know this is going to sound crazy, right? This is going to sound crazy. And we've been saying something like this for so many years. and it's never seemed possible. It's always seemed like this completely like out of left field thing that just could never happen. But what if, hear me out, Ishii's on the bubble. What if he fucking wins the play in, gets in the B block? It's a lot easier to get into those top 3 spots in the tournament. What if he gets into one of those 3?
He's on the A side.
Oh, he's on the A side.
Yeah. So if he gets in, he'd be in with Shingo and Naito.
Even better. He gets into A side. He gets one of those 3 spots. He wins the fucking G1. No, I know it sounds crazy, but they've done Cinderella runs before, right? Mm-hmm. What if they do Naito versus Ishii in the dome and Ishii fucking wins the title? You know what I mean? Like the something that you just couldn't expect could ever happen. He, you know, we're at a point right now in the booking of New Japan where they could be doing some very bold things that you don't expect them to do that is outside of the norm for Gedo. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but the possibility is on the table right now, because really at the end of the day, it's Naito and whoever you think is going to beat Naito for the title. And they could always give Ishii that perfunctory gold watch run, the big moment. I think that would do business if they were like, he fucking won the G1. They push him all the way through. You never thought it would happen. And now it's like, do you believe in miracles? Like he gets like a Bryan Danielson or like a Kofi Mania opportunity at the title. Like how many people would be invested in that story, and how good would that match be? They could do that.
Yeah, that would be a great option. And, you know, but as much as I love Ishii, I don't know if I want to go with that story versus trying to push somebody new that's going to be in the main event spot a little bit longer.
That's true. But at the same time, my thinking is if you did do something like that, then you can turn around and Ishii doesn't have to have a long title reign. He could be the guy that puts over whoever it is, whether it's Umino or Tsuji or Zack Sabre Jr., whatever. And then you still got the Naito versus the young guy match in your pocket for later on down the stretch. This is so unlikely, but that is the excitement that's presented from this play-in tournament, is whoever's coming through, in my opinion, provided it's not one of the young guys or one of the no-hopers, they've got a compelling story that could propel them into the finals or the semifinals.
Yeah. Rainbow's other question, he says, prior to seeing the blocks, I would have guessed that Shota Umino and ZSJ were the top choices to win the G1, but if Naito is world champion, the odds of the winner coming out of his block, especially after a sudden death playoff, seem low. What are your thoughts on that? We kind of addressed that.
I feel confident that the winner still comes from A block, just because I don't see a strong marquee match outside of Naito and Tsuji, unless you're really sold on the idea of, you know, Takeshita and Naito, and maybe that's the way that maybe that's how they sold Tony Khan sold them on giving them Takeshita. I don't know.
Yeah. Set of questions here from Def Triangle 720. Who do you think actually has a chance of winning the G1?
I think quite a few people, but I think the most likely individuals, in my opinion, are going to be Zack Sabre Jr. and Shota Umino.
Yeah, and then I would put like Shingo as a fringe guy. I think Tsuji is a fringe guy.
I really don't think Shingo's winning. Like they've beat it into my head that he's not that caliber in their booking anymore.
We'll see. He just dropped the Never title. That could free him up.
You want this so bad.
What I really want is, you know, Kojima to get that G1 run.
Mm-hmm.
He also asked, do you think it's a waste having Jake Lee in the tournament after he just lost to Naito?
He's gonna probably get that win back over Naito, I would assume.
Yeah, I can see him getting a win over Naito and then them doing a third match in the fall, either at an all-together show or whatever the October-September show would be.
The one thing I did want to mention. So we, you know, not that I think that this needed to be chock full of outsiders. Obviously it's a tight field, But I was a little surprised that the two we got were from just Noah and AEW as opposed to CMLL, especially considering the whole thing with who is it, Soberano?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like supposed to be signed. We haven't seen him all year. He's like a heavyweight guy, and he's not in the G1. They've done they've had like Lasombra in the tournament before. So little surprised by that, but yeah, I mean, as far as Jake Lee goes, I don't know, man. I haven't seen enough of him to really make a clear determination. His his reputation precedes him, and I can't say I'm super excited for him being in the tournament. If I had a choice of Noah guy, it wouldn't have been him. But there is the ongoing feud between him and Naito. They've been doing business together. Kind of makes a little bit of sense. He's tall. They like that. It is funny that they got like the two tallest Japanese stars that they could in Takeshita and Jake Lee. It's like they're trying to replace Okada, just looking for the tallest guys they can. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of with you. Like, I haven't seen enough of him to fully like give my final stamp of approval, but he hasn't really knocked my socks off the few times I have seen him now. So, I mean, would I have rather have just had Ishii in instead of Jake Lee? Yeah, but like you mentioned, there's a feud with Naito, and it does seem like he's potentially jumping to New Japan.
There's also the thing where Katsuhiko Nakajima is a freelancer and outsider, and he's unsigned. And I know that he recently is showing up in Glate. I don't know how long that deal is for, but he was a guy that I was kind of hoping, like, man, the excitement if they brought him in, but I don't know. I don't think anyone wants to fucking work with him. So
yeah. Defrango also asks, do you think Takeshita could make it to the quarterfinals in the tournament?
I think he will. I think he definitely will, just because in the past when we had AEW guys, they've always done well in the G1, and in the most recent tournaments, they've been the 4 block. So they've had to take like only 1 loss or 2 losses at most to really make it worth their while. But with Takeshita, he's not going to eat a ton of losses, and he's probably going to like go far. When there's 3 spots, it's almost a foregone conclusion that he's going to be one of those guys. He could even, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the block leader and goes in as 1B and then loses to the guy that goes to the finals.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being a 6-3 guy and really dominating that block, and getting knocked out in the quarters. But I definitely think he's going to be one of those top 3 in the B block.
Bro, I could see him going like 6-2-1 or 7-2.
Yeah, it's possible.
Easily. Like, and then he loses the third match in the semifinals to kind of get him out of there.
Yeah. With the heavy tag champions not in the tournament, who could be their next challengers that are not named Bishamon?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I really don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't really have a team in mind to face TMDK.
And since they're not in the tournament, you're not setting up the next challengers. I wonder, I mean, they're not on this tour, right? Shane Nichols?
Maybe they'll be on undercards teaming with Zach. We don't have the full, undercards of the cards yet, so maybe they'll do that. But as far as I know, they're at least not scheduled as far as I know right now.
Yeah, you kind of have to wonder if they're going to be on the Soul Tour to kind of set things up. I know there is a Tamashi show that's scheduled for in the middle of G1 Climax. Who knows if that ever makes tape or whatever. Capital Collision is coming up. Maybe that's a potential.
Well, they're advertised for that show.
Okay. And I wonder if that will be a title defense of some sort. I don't know. It's a tough one to really. I wish I had a better answer for you. I just don't know who their next challengers could be.
They did They were on an 8-man tag on Collision this past Saturday against the Blackpool Combat Club. So maybe it'll be 2 of those guys.
I don't watch that shit.
You asked which 2 guys should qualify for the G1.
Oh, from the play-in.
Plan.
That's a tough one. I mean, geez, okay. So I'll say this from the A block. If you're just talking pure excitement, like the guys that are gonna have the best matches, it's gonna be Ishii, YOSHI-HASHI, or Callum Newman. The tried and true is Ishii. Like, and it's still, even considering everything, considering how hard YOSHI-HASHI works, considering how much promise Callum Newman has, the proof is in the pudding. I can't deny that Ishii is still one of the top performers in the G1 year over year, even last year, even with his body breaking down and him aging. Like, so if it was just down to match quality, for me in the A block, it's Ishii. In the B block, I would have to go with Taichi. I think Taichi's the best current performer, in the heavyweight ranks out of everybody in that block when it just comes. And plus, he matches up so well with a lot of the guys in the B block. Those would be like your most exciting work rate picks. And there's also pretty cool narratives for both of them. But I kind of feel like I think we might end up with Callum Newman and Ishii in the A block qualifier anyways, just because of them teasing the match and they're on opposite sides. And then I think we're going to get Taichi beating TJP versus, it could literally be any one of those 3. Like, it could be Yano.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you thinking, Jeremy? Like, who do you think should be the guy that comes out of these blocks?
I don't know. I mean, the longtime New Japan fan of me says Ishii and Tanahashi. I mean,
right.
It's kind of weird not having a G1 with either of those guys. They've been the G1 since we've been doing this show. But yeah, also from a work rate standpoint, I do think Ishii and Callum from the A side would be the best bet. And I agree. I think that's going to be the finals there. And you have 2 choices there. Do you give Callum that big win and throw him in the deep end in that A block, or do you go with the tried and true and you give Callum a great match, but then Ishii goes through and then Ishii goes in there and kills it with everybody. So I would go Ishii or Callum there. And then in the B block, I kind of feel like they're telling a story of like Boltin and Callum kind of being on the same level. So I could see it end up being like Boltin and Taichi. And then it could be a similar situation where do you go with Boltin, throw him in the deep end, or you go with a tried and true guy like Taichi?
Well, okay, so here's my question with that. Obviously, Yano can beat anybody on any day of the week, but Oleg Boltin would be totally perfectly fine beating Yano. But then he's got to beat Tanahashi, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he beats Tanahashi,
he should probably win, right?
Then he should probably just win and go into the G1, because what does that do for everybody if he just beats Tanahashi, but he doesn't even qualify for the G1? Sure, he gets a big win, and maybe that's the feather in his cap, but I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense. Given the fact that it's Tanahashi, and I know that, I get it that there's this thing where Callum Newman and Oleg Boltin are somewhat, kind of equals. They're kind of not. I mean, Callum Newman's been wrestling a lot longer. He's a lot further along in his career. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Tanahashi and Taichi in the B block finals, even though they're both the guys with the buys. I think that just makes sense. They're the 2 highest performing, from point total standpoints and single records in the company in that B block qualifier. And then I could see either one of them going in, whether it's, I kind of think it should be Taichi and Ishii still.
Yeah, that's probably your overall best bet. And I feel with Tanahashi's the state of his body and his age and taking on more of an office role, like you mentioned, I think it's a compelling story if he's out, and then you get him to rest his body for a month, and then you tell this whole story of like, all right, I was in the G1. How the heck do I get on Tokyo Dome now? Like, I'm not going to be in the main event. Like, what do I do? Like, am I defending the Never Six Mans? Am I in the Battle Royal now? You have this whole like meltdown, like, midlife crisis storyline of him trying to find a spot in the dome, and then all of 2025 is him trying to get back in G1.
Yeah, it's a crisis of identity at that point for sure. I mean, on the one hand, too, you kind of have to imagine that not too far from now, Tanahashi will be doing his final G1. I think we've already gotten the miracle run from Tanahashi in the G1. That's never happening again. So he's not ever going to win this thing, but probably get the final G1 run of Tanahashi. And in the past, when especially in modern New Japan times, Nagata, Tenzan, they both got final runs well before they ever were close to retirement. So I don't think Tanahashi's anywhere near retirement, but now might be the time for him to have a final G1 run. And it's hard for me to imagine that they make that announcement coming off of a B block play-in qualifier. I feel like if they were just going to do that, he wouldn't be trying to qualify. They would have just made the announcement and he would just be in. So maybe him losing and not getting in is the better story, because then the next year he can get in and make that announcement. It's his final run, blah, blah, blah. You made a good point about Tanahashi's body. What about Ishii?
Bro, I haven't seen that man slow down though.
I agree, but there's a lot of talk about whether his body can handle another G1, especially this style G1, because it's more matches than the last few. And so you kind of have to wonder if it is a situation where this is a great excuse to give him an out from having to be in the tournament. He was in the play-ins, he didn't qualify, he lost to a Callum Newman or a KENTA, and it just didn't, it didn't work out or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so far, like I haven't watched an Ishii match this year and been like, damn, he's washed, or he's moving slow, or that wasn't crisp. I'm like, he still goes hard.
I would agree, but I do think that he's slowed a step. I mean, he's still able to do the Ishii match and everything like that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like when Suzuki a few years ago was like, damn, we're like, Suzuki is still Suzuki. Now he's not, but 4 or 5 years ago, we're like, fuck, like he's old, he's beat up, but he's still doing it. And, in a certain sense, Ishii does it at a higher level than even that when it comes to just pure physicality and work rate. So for me, I'm going to stick with, I wouldn't be surprised if Callum Newman does get through, but I think it should be Ishii and Taichi. I think that there's something weird going on with Taichi giving the looks. I think that's leading to something. I think maybe he's the one with the most compelling story to get in. And then with Ishii, my only misgiving, I'm kind of picking him more for pure, like he's just going to put on the best matches and everything like that. But I don't know if they go with him in any meaningful way coming out of the qualifier, and you want the qualifier to mean something. So I would love if they did put him through that it was some sort of Cinderella run, but that's highly unlikely. If it's not him, I think Callum Newman makes a lot of sense, but you kind of imagine Callum Newman would just mainly be there, probably eat a lot of pinfalls.
Right. Yeah. He'd probably end up being like a 1-8 guy if he gets through, kind of thing. Def Wrangle's last question. Do you think if Bolton wins a qualifier, he'll actually no longer be a young lion?
Well, we've already had that discussion about whether he is or isn't at this point, so hard to say.
Yeah. Discord Daddy MJ says, I still believe Ishii will make this year's G1. He had a little stare down with Callum at the end of their match at Seoul to likely set up for a match. However, if we don't get Ishii in another G1, can you reflect on his importance to the tournament over the years? And is he one of the greatest G1 competitors of all time?
I'm pretty much at the point where I think that Tomohiro Ishii is the greatest competitor just per capita in G1 history. He doesn't get the love for that. Maybe the records, the win-loss record doesn't reflect it. But when it just comes down to who has the best matches every year, if it's not him, he's like number 2. Many years he's like 1A, 1B with guys like Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, Will Ospreay, Shingo Takagi, shit like that. And this has been going on for over a decade. So, you're talking about the best tournament in all of wrestling during the hottest period of the company, during the best renaissance period of quality of wrestling. And he is the one guy that's putting on the most incredible matches of anybody in the entirety of the tournament. The only person I think that gives him a little bit of a run for his money is like Kota Ibushi, and he even started to peter out his last tournament or two, and Ishii's still doing it, and it doesn't make sense. He's the fucking man. Like, he's that guy. He's maybe the greatest competitor in G1 history.
Yeah, Ishii is incredible. We've seen so many great Ishii G1 matches. Yeah, definitely gonna go down as the greatest G1 competitor, pound for pound, star for star. It's gonna be sad if he doesn't get in. It's gonna be the end of an era. Really kind of that passing the torch of Ishii is not in there. And yeah, like I said, he doesn't get the love that he probably should get for these performances. I think we kind of take him for granted. But yeah, I think for years people will go back and watch. You can pull up any year G1, and there's so many bangers of him and Shibata.
Can you, Jeremy? Can you pull up any G1? I don't even know if you can still do that with the fucking website or the fucking app.
Well, I haven't tried recently, but there are other sites that might help you out. But yeah, if you go back to any Ishii G1, him Shibata, him Goto, him Shingo, like him Okada, him Ibushi, him Taichi, you go through year G1, just instant classics.
Mm-hmm.
His other question: after seeing the blocks and play-in tournament brackets, are you more or less bullish on the tournament as a whole? Any surprises on the guys on the outside looking in?
Great question. I mean, I feel like I've touched on all of that a little bit at this point, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm pretty excited for the tournament. I think it's going to be, a tournament that New Japan really needs to kind of pick some steam up. And yeah, I think it's kind of ballsy on some of the guys they left out, like Ishii and Tanahashi and Taichi. I think those were ballsy moves, and it's going to be interesting to see who gets through. Less Commission 7252. Do you guys think there are too many free spots when revealing the block? Guys like Jake Lee, Henare, Great Okan, and Narita, to me, didn't deserve the spots due to the lack of performance or poor performances. To replace those four, I would have put YOSHI-HASHI, Josh Alexander from TNA, Masa Kitamiya from Noah, and Drilla Maoni. I hope they choose these wrestlers from a 1-year performance period.
I will say this. I was a little bit surprised that Great Okan was automatically in the tournament and didn't have to qualify via play-in. I wonder if he hadn't have won in a kayfabe sense, if he hadn't have won the KOPW, if he wouldn't have been on the outside looking in. So that one's interesting. But Henare, I would not kick Henare out. Henare, Henare is like, he just won the fucking Never title and came back from everything. That's kind of crazy. Narita's one of the Reiwa guys. They made a concerted effort to put all 4 Reiwa guys in the tournament, and I think that's a really good move. Jake Lee, I understand some people have some hesitancy about him being the guy, but he, is a name of some value. How much value that is debatable, but we can't have everything that we want in life less commission. So, as much as I would love to see Josh Alexander and Masa Kitamiya in here, and I understand, YOSHI-HASHI's on the outside looking in, trying to play in. Like, it's just, a lot of people are always going to have issues with a 20-man tournament with the inclusions and exclusions, but it is what it is. I think by and large, they did a really good job personally.
Yeah. Rambone says that Okan should have had to eat a bag of lemons or something to qualify.
I mean, if they did that, he would win. We know he's good at that.
Yeah. I mean, out of the guys that he mentioned, like I would say Jake Lee's like the only one where I'm like, I could take him or leave him. I would have locked in Ishii instead of Jake Lee, but they're clearly doing something there with him. There's a story to tell. Yeah, Henare, I think, is definitely a guy that's a lock. I feel like Okan and Narita, from a kayfabe sense, are probably the two guys you can kind of be like, what did they really do this year? I mean, Narita did get a world title match, and then Okan's has kind of been in KLPW. But I mean, I think those are guys, those are your future guys that you want in the mix going forward. He also asked, you guys think Takeshita is worthy enough to be booked into the finals? I know in the last All Together review, I recall that both of y'all liked him more than Umino and prefer him to be the ace of New Japan. The decision of booking him to the finals against Zack will be fresh and new for a G1 final. This could potentially be the first time since 2012 that we have seen two new faces in the G1 finals. The last two were Kazuchika Okada and Carl Anderson.
I would be a bit surprised if they did an outsider going into the finals of the G1. It would be a great match. Don't get me wrong. And I wouldn't complain that much about it, but I feel very confident that Takeshita is not heading to the Dome main event. And so it would somewhat make the outcome of that match a foregone conclusion and make it a bit of a formality. And in that sense, it might not be as exciting. But you just never know. Maybe they do something like that. It's been a long time since New Japan has had an outsider from a rival group go to the finals of the G1. I mean, the last one I really can recall is like when oh man, Chris made us watch this match, but it was like Tenzan versus it might have been Jun Akiyama in like 2004 or something like that. Maybe there's been others. I can't recall all off the top of my head, but it's not very traditional for New Japan to put an outside guy in the finals. It makes all the sense in the world for them to have those same stars that they're trying to build healthy relationships go far in the tournament, maybe be in the top 3 spots, but I doubt that they would put him in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, if it happened, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's definitely a semifinal guy at the least. But yeah, I'm excited about the fact that we are potentially going to get a fresh final and get some new faces in there.
Speaking about what you said earlier, I don't think that either of us were actually lobbied for Takeshita to be the definitive ace of New Japan. What we remarked about was the star presence that he had and the quality of his work and his look as compared to the other 5 men in that All Together show. And there's a stark, comparison there. And I did joke that New Japan got the wrong one, but that's not to say that I think that he would be a true success as the ace, because while I am a fan of Takeshita and I think that he's very impressive, I don't know if he would connect on that level where he could be a draw or where he has the right kind of charisma to really establish himself as a top draw in New Japan. Maybe he does. I'm not saying he doesn't. I just don't. We haven't seen that yet, so it's hard for me to say like he's the guy we should go with when I haven't seen him work enough in Japan, especially in the New Japan context, to claim that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great young guy, and I mean, also I think Umino and Tsuji are great as well. But yeah, just in that match, he just came off like a bigger deal. He just carried himself like a star or top guy, and I think there's stuff that Umino and Tsuji and Uemura and Narita, that's just something that they still need to learn and kind of develop that kind of aura around them where Takeshita had that. And I just think he'd be a great guy to have on a roster on New Japan that's looking for stars.
One thing I will say, I don't think Tsuji was in that match.
He wasn't. I'm just, lumping him in as like a future, ace guy.
But we're going to see them go head to head on the first night. And I got a feeling that we're not going to be worried about Tsuji not projecting star presence on that night. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed in that moment personally.
Yeah. Hawaiian Punch VV, do you think that Jake Lee is NJPW bound? He always wanted to be in the G1, which he now is. He didn't sign a contract with Noah in hopes of NJPW potentially signing him down the line. And similar question with Barry Walsh, with the news of Jake Lee disbanding GLG and Noah, and also the comments Gabe Kidd made saying he didn't mind Jake but if it was up to him, he wouldn't bother with the rest of GLG. Do you think it's likely he will stay in New Japan after the G1 or join shortly after?
I haven't heard anything specific about this, but I wouldn't be surprised just given the nature of things right now. On the one hand, you could say, oh, well, they don't want to upset their partner, but then, just recently they had Gabe Kidd headlining a show where on the same night they're announcing working relationships with WWE and bringing in AJ Styles to work a match with Marufuji. So, we're seeing the cracks between these unions, and the UJPW thing just seems like it's falling apart, little by little. And a lot of people kind of said that was the case. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Lee did make his way to New Japan. A little bit of the Tony Khan / Vince McMahon thing there, oh, send over some of your top guys. We'll give them a little bit of a little bit of exposure,
Yeah, I mean, at this point,
and you sign.
I feel like the tea leaves are there. Yeah, GLG breaking up this feud with Naito out of nowhere. Yeah, it does seem like, like you said, they want another tall guy on the roster, and they found one. So I think that could be happening.
Plus, they just lost Hikuleo, or should I say Tala Tonga? They
lost Tonga? The Tala
one. They lost Tala Tonga, so they needed another tall guy.
Yeah.
I personally, I mean, who knows? Maybe signing Jake Lee maybe it'll be good. Maybe he needs a fresh coat of paint. Maybe it'll be a good change of scenery. Maybe the things that people have said they see in him could be brought to the forefront here, but I don't know if I see that working personally.
Yeah. So they did announce some of the featured matches for all the nights. So night 1, July 20th, Osaka is going to be a double block night. We're going to have Shingo Takagi versus Tetsuya Naito from the A block, Yota Tsuji versus Konosuke Takeshita from the B block. Night 2, the 21st, also a double block night. We're going to have Naito versus Sabre, Goto versus Yuya Uemura. Night 3 on the 23rd, A block night. We're going to have Naito and Jake Lee, and a bonus B block match with Jeff Cobb versus Takeshita. Night 4, B block, we got ELP versus Yota Tsuji. Night 5, A block, we got Tetsuya Naito versus Evil. Night 6 in Fukuoka, B block, Henare versus Takeshita. Night 7 in Fukuoka, July 29th, Umino versus Sabre. Night 8, July 31st in Yamaguchi, B block, Henare versus Yuya Uemura. Night 3 in Osaka from the A block, or excuse me, night 9, August 3rd in Osaka from the A block, we have Shingo versus Sabre. Night 10, August 4th, Henare versus Jeff Cobb. Night 11, August 6th, we got Gabe Kidd versus Jake Lee in Korakuen. Night 12, August 7th, also in Korakuen and B block, Uemura versus Ren Narita. Night 13, August 8th in Yokohama, we got ZSJ and Gabe Kidd. Night 14, August 10th in Sendai, we got Tsuji versus Uemura. Night 15, August 12th in Nagoya, we got Naito versus Great Okan. Night 16, August 14th, we got Tsuji versus Jeff Cobb. And then night 17, August 15th, that will be the A2 versus A3 and B2 versus B3 matches. And then August 17th in Ryogoku, we'll have the semifinals. And then August 18th, my birthday, we will have the G1 finals.
You keep throwing out there that it's your birthday. It's almost like you're hinting to everybody that we need to remember that the finals is your birthday.
I'm saying it's going to be a great day to celebrate another year of life for me. G1 final. It's going to be a fun day.
Okay. Yeah.